Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Jaya Radha Gopinata, Radha Gopinata Shri Radhe. Jaya Radha Gopinata, Radha Gopinata Shri Radhe. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Gurudeva, 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 Jaya Gurudeva. Nitya Lila Pravishtom Vishnupada Paramangsa Parivrajikacharya Stotra Shada Shri Srimadabhaya Charanaravindra Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nitya Lila Pravishtom Vishnupada Paramahangsa Parivrajikacharya Stotra Shada Shri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nitya Lila Pravishtom Vishnupada Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnupada Srila Sachidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai. Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnupada Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Srila Krishnas Kaviraj Thakur Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Gauriya Vaishnav Guru Varga Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Caitanya Caritamrita Ki Jai. Nittai Gaura Premanande. Hari Hari Bol. All were assembled devotees Hare Krishna. All were assembled devotees Hare Krishna. All were assembled devotees Hare Krishna. All were Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All were Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Just to clarify, I always duck away to put the kartals away because I don't have anywhere to put the kartals, just in case, because I always disappear. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupah Kadamahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prem Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratashe Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyaiva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Welcome again to Sri Caitanya Caritamrita class. Today we will be continuing our discussion of Rai Ramananda Samvad and hopefully, oh, not hopefully, it's so nectarian to speak on Rai Ramananda Samvad, and there's so much to discuss, so much nectar to delve into, but the plan at least is that we will conclude our discussion of the Rai Ramananda Samvad. We will not be concluding the 8th chapter. There is still a beautiful section that follows after the question and answers that Mahaprabhu is proposing to Ramananda Rai. Very, very sweet pastimes happen at the end of this 8th chapter. But I would think by referring to concluding to the Rai Ramananda Samvad, I mean concluding the philosophical discourses which compose it. So to do that, we will conclude the 4th and final question. And the 4th question is less, actually it would be a bit of a misrepresentation to call it the 4th question. I just sort of group it together because it's because Gauranga Darshan Prabhu does, and also because it's a series of smaller questions that all get lumped into one overarching question, if that makes sense. It's asking about the greatness. What is the greatest thing? And then it asks all different varieties. So it's not just for convenience sake that it's listed as the 4th question, but it is also convenience as a certain aspect, because it's a lot of questions that have quick one-word answers. So we are continuing then. But first, before we get into that, we will speak about what happened after yesterday's events, after yesterday's description, the description of yesterday's pastimes. As we know, there was a discussion. Firstly, there was that of Sambandha. And when we resume these classes after Kartik month, we will have a big recap of the Rai Ramananda Samvad, and then we will continue to go forth into the rest of the South India trip, and then of course Mahaprabhu's further pastimes. Who knows, as long as these nightly classes are going for, we will see how deep we will get into the Rai Ramananda Samvad. Into the Madhya Lila of Caitanya Caritamrita. Anyways, so there was a Sambandha was first. There was the Prayojana that was first discussed. What is the goal in spiritual life? What is the goal in life in general? The goal of spiritual life must be the goal of life in general. What other point can there be but a spiritual point to our existence? So, what is the goal of life? What is the prayojana? What is it that which we are appealing to? What is that which we are directing all of ourselves to, or rather should be directing ourselves to? That is none other than the Prem Prayojana. Prem, Kanta Prem. So, love of Godhead, love of Krishna. This is the Prayojana. So we have established this is the Prayojana. Then the next question came, question 2, which is asking about Sambandha. What is the nature of reality? What is the nature of Krishna? What is the nature of Srimati Radharani? What is the nature of Rasa? What is the nature of Prem? What is the nature of all of these things? That was the discussion. And then, thirdly, there was the question of Abhidheya. How do we get there? How do we reach that point? How do we achieve that perfection? That prayojana with which we should be aspiring for. So, all of that is, all of that has been concluded. That discussion has been dealt with. We have understood Radhar Swarup, the Swarupa Srimati Radharani, involves Prema Tattva and Rasa Tattva. We've understood all these things. Then, of Abhidheya, it is surrender to the spiritual master's lotus feet. Surrender to his lotus feet and to his instructions. And then, furthermore, it is eventually Raganuga. But that is all to be understood under the guidance of the spiritual master. So after this has been complete, we have now completed the first sort of night, if you will, of the Rai Ramananda Samvad. And what does Krishna's Kaviraj Thakur say? What does he say after this was complete? What happened was, Eta shuni prabhu tare koilo alingono. Dui jone gola goli koren krondono. After hearing this, Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu embraced Ramananda Rai, and both of them, embracing shoulder to shoulder, began to cry. E motto prema veshe ratri gonaila, prato kale nijo nijo, karje dunhe gela. The entire night was passed in this way, in ecstatic love of Godhead. In the morning they both departed to tend to their respective duties, so it was done. The night was complete. So they all went away. Sambandha, Abhidheya, and Prayojana, or rather in this case, Prayojana, Sambandha, and Abhidheya, had all been addressed. So in this way, Mahaprabhu was very ecstatic. But before Mahaprabhu left, something happened. Bidayo shomoye prabhur chorone dhariya, Ramananda rayo kohe binoti koriya. Before departing, Ramananda Rai fell to the ground and caught hold of Prabhur Choron, the lotus feet of Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he spoke these words, begging Mahaprabhu, More kripa korite tomar ihan agomon, dino dosho rohi shodha moro dushto monno. You have come here just to show me your causeless mercy. Therefore stay here for at least 10 days and purify my polluted mind. Because you might be thinking, Toshan Krsna Dasa, you've been building up that there's more to the Rai Ramananda Samvad. There's a fourth question, but they're leaving. No. Ramananda Rai says, this has caused me so much ecstasy. Do not end this now. Toma bina onno nahi jibo udharite. Toma bina onno nahi Krishno premo dite. But for you, there is one who can deliver all the living entities. For you alone can deliver love of Krishna. But for you, besides you, there is no one. Please remain. Please remain and let us continue these nectarian discussions. Prabhu ko he ailano shuni tomar guno. Krishna kotha shuni shudho koraite mono. The Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he then said, having heard about your good qualities, all tomar gunno, I have come here. I have come to hear about Krishna from you, and thus my mind may be purified. Joiche shuni lun, toiche dekhi lun, tomar mohima. Radha Krishna premo rosho gyaner tumi shima. Now that I have actually seen those glories that I have heard of, what I've heard about you has been confirmed. As far as the pastimes of Radha and Krishna in a loving mood are concerned, you are the limit of knowledge. Why? Because let us go back to the beginning of this discussion. Ramananda Rai is none other than Vishaka Sakhi. None other. So, if we understand this, we can understand. Vishaka understands most deeply, most strongly, the heart of Srimati Radharani. And therefore, because Srimati Radharani is Mahabhav Swarupini, because she is that, because Vishaka knows so intimately this, therefore she also knows the heart of devotion the most strongly. And there is no greater knowledge. If Srimati Radharani is the greatest point of knowledge, if Srimati Radharani is all of Bhava, all of Mahabhav, the highest feelings possible, compose Srimati Radharani's body, and Vishaka knows this body, that form, then clearly the very limit of perfection, the very limit of devotion is known to such a personality. And then Mahaprabhu says, in order to satisfy the heart of Ramananda Rai, what does he say? Dosho diner ka kotha jabot ami jibo, tabot tomar shongo charite naribo. To say nothing of 10 days, as long as I live, I shall find it impossible to give up your company. Nilachole tumi ami thakibo ekashonge shukhe gonai bo kalo Krishna kotha ronge. You and I shall remain together in Nilachala, Shri Shri Jagannath Puri Dham. We shall pass our time together in joy, talking about Krishna and all of his pastimes. And in this way, now they departed. But in the evening, Ramananda Rai, what did he do? He returned to see Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And then they met time and time again, sitting in the secluded place and discussing devotional service by the question and answer process. Mahaprabhu asked the questions and Ramananda Rai gave the answers. In this way, they were engaged in discussion throughout the night. And now we come to the final set of questions. The fourth question, if you will, but it really is just a series of questions reiterating the same question. What is the most important? What is the most important of this? What is the most important of this? What is the most important of this? And what is the first question? Prabhu kohe kon bidda bidda modheshar. Of all types of education, which is the most important? Rai kohe Krishna bhakti bina biddo nahi ar. And Ramananda Rai said, not what is, his answer wasn't, this is the most important type of knowledge. That was answered by his answer, but he went something higher. He said there is not some knowledge that is important and other that is less important. He says no knowledge matters on earth except for what? Except for the transcendental devotion to Krishna. Transcendental devotional service to Krishna is the only education that matters. And so we may think, there's all sorts of education that people want. People are after so many types of knowledge. So often people will say, I've got this degree, that degree. It's not that that is important, but it is not actually, forget that. Today some people will say, learning Bhagavatam is important. But most important, focus on your studies. Get number one result in the state. Top your medicine class. Keep on, this is the important part. Bhagavatam is on the side. Not what Mahaprabhu is saying. Mahaprabhu is saying, through the mouth of Ramananda Rai, he's saying that no other education is important. No other education matters. Now still we have to get an education, get a degree, get a good job. These things are important because we need to do it in order to facilitate our learning of devotional service. But separate to devotional service, it has no value. We need financial stability in order to give stability to us devotional service. But besides that, all education is worthless. Only that which pertains to Krishna Bhakti. So these questions, they're all running on the theme, Srila Prabhupada writes in his purport. There's almost a material question being asked, and it is showing spiritual life is something else, something greater. So then Mahaprabhu, he says, Kirti gono modhe jiber kon boro kirti. And Ramananda Rai says, Krishna bhakto bolia jahar hoy khyati. Mahaprabhu is asked, out of all the glorious activities, which is the most glorious? And Ramananda Rai, what did he say? He said, those who are reputed to be a devotee of Lord Krishna enjoy the utmost fame and glory. We said this when discussing Madhavendra Puri. No matter where he went, the glories of his qualities and his devotion, his pastimes, they were there already. Like a shadow, fame follows the devotee. And which is the great irony, because the devotee does not want fame. The devotee doesn't want fame, but it follows him anyways because of the glories of the devotee's qualities. Look at Srila Prabhupada. All around the world, the glories of Srila Prabhupada are being sung. These are the glories of Srila Prabhupada, and these are the glories of devotees. So the devotee, this is the greatest reputation. People will say, I want all these good material things so that I have a good reputation. People think I'm a well-educated person. People think that I am a respectable person. People think that I have lots of dignity. I have lots of position. I am high class. So many people, especially ethnic, from different ethnicities, as in foreigners to Australia, they will come and they will be now so proud. I am in Australia now. Oh, like this. I see so much. I see my relatives, my Indian relatives, those who stayed in India, they're very humble. And some who went to the West, some are humble as well. I'm not saying all of who go to the West are arrogant, but so many. Now I am something big, I'm something fancy. They're lower middle class by Australian standards, but for them they think we are now the best. But even the upper class people in Australia, actually that fame is nothing. True fame, true good name, is to be known as a devotee of Krishna. Let it be known. Let it be known. Not how much money one has. In fact, one should be spending all of their money on Krishna consciousness. It should be known how much one was willing to serve the Lord. This is real fame. And this is the only way that we can get real fame. Who is speaking about a person who had a really good job, who managed to move somewhere, or managed to move up a socio-economic class? Who even speaks about such a person 10 years after that, 1 year after that person is dead? Barely speak about that person while they're alive. How much do we speak about Narottam Das Thakur? How much do we speak about Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur? About Rupa Goswami? All of these great personalities, after they left this planet, after they left our mortal vision, still their fame is being glorified and spoken about. All over the world. We should understand these things. Then, the next question. They are very long and nectarian purports, by the way. Start from around 245. This is when these begin. 245, chapter 8, Madhya Lila, Caitanya Caritamrita. The purports are very nectarian. Only because I want to complete the Rai Ramananda Samvad today, I'm going a little quick through. Otherwise we could unpack beautiful nectarian purports Srila Prabhupada has given. The next question Mahaprabhu asks, Shampotiro modhe jiber kon shampoti goni. What does he say? Of the many capitalists who possess great riches, who is the topmost? Very controversial take from Mahaprabhu. Capitalism is not so fashionable anymore. But what is the alternative? Rascaldom as well. People are saying, don't vote for this person, he's a capitalist. Vote for Bernie Sanders, he's a socialist. Vote for this socialist, that socialist, or democratic socialist, whatever. All Maya, anyways. Actually is all nonsense. Virtually every politician today is a demon. What to speak? Capitalist, socialist, who cares? Anyways, that is not the point of this text. Of the many capitalists who possess great riches, who is topmost? Ramananda Rai says, Radha Krishna premo jar she boro dhani. He who is richest in love for Radha and Krishna is the greatest capitalist. In fact, I would go so far to say, even he who has only a tiny drop of affection to the devotee who has love for Radha and Krishna, he is the richest person. Because these merits they're eternally valuable. We know they are long-term investments. And long-term investments are, they're very valuable. Aren't they? A long-term investment is a very valuable thing. Why? Because they keep on giving value, they keep on giving value, they keep on giving value. Krishna Bhakti is the ultimate long-term investment. Everything material, composed of 3 modes of material nature, eventually goes away, eventually decays, eventually is lost. But Krishna Bhakti is on the platform of the soul, not on the platform of material nature, but on the spiritual platform. We will notice, I'll point it out later, but soon, Mahaprabhu starts clarifying which people he means, and he says jiber, of the jiva, the jivas. He's speaking about a spiritual concern. And so spiritual value lasts forever because spiritual realities never decay. Spiritual reality is never born, neither does it die, neither does it age. And because of that, spiritual life is of the most valuable. Even if it went away, it would be the most valuable, because it is something that actually gives joy, unlike this faulty material riches. So many people spend so much time saving up all this money and then they die. And then what happens? The money is gone, no longer theirs. If one person chants just once, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. If a person just once chants this, they are so much richer than the richest person on earth. And they will be able to carry that after death. So that is the value. Next, Mahaprabhu asks, Dukho modhe kono dukho hoy guru toro. Of all kinds of distress, what is the most painful? Krishna bhakto biroho bina dukho nahi dekhi poro. This is Ramananda Rai. He's saying, apart from separation from the devotee of Krishna, I know of no unbearable happiness. All pain is bearable, but note here the point. The point that Ramananda Rai is making, he's not even saying separation from Krishna is bad. Separation from the devotee of Krishna. Krishna bhakto biroho. This is what will destroy our soul. How painful is it? And how many of us experience this? With material friends, at times we've all experienced this. We just want to be left alone. We just want to, because material friendships is based on lust, is based on this person can give me some joy. This person makes me laugh, this person's good for a giggle or a hoot. And then I'm done. Now I'm sick and tired. I want some other entertainment. So we get sick and tired. We want to be alone, want to hang out with someone else. Spiritual life, spiritual friendships are not like this. When one experiences a spiritual friendship, what other association is there than the Vaishnava association? And even higher, anyone can speak. I would give up every moment that I've spent in the association of every other person in order to spend just one extra second with my revered spiritual master. Forget about even, as glorious as it is, associating with devotees on your own level who you befriend. How amazing it is to spend moments with one's guru. I have never been happier in my life than when I was paying dandavats to the lotus feet of my spiritual master and having his darshan. These things are very high, very valuable. And when we realize their value, that is why it is the greatest sorrow. That is why it is the greatest sorrow. Because we only have this great sorrow if we are missing out on something incredibly valuable. There is nothing more valuable than the association of Vaishnava Thakur. 1/11 of a second we can obtain all perfections. So like this, there is no pain greater than separation to the Vaishnavas. So many people during this Corona period, they've said, I'm missing Radha Gopinath so much, and that is good. But actually the higher conception is to say, I am missing the devotees so much. In fact, many people are saying, it's nice, I can go to the temple, no one else is there, not obstructed. This is not the proper way to think. Not to think, oh, now I will go serve Radha Gopinath. Now I can serve Radha Gopinath. Oh, don't get me wrong. Please serve Radha Gopinath. Perfection of your life. But not with this mindset that these other people are getting in my way. Now I can do what I'm really here for. Actually, we should be going and thinking, I'm here to serve the Vaishnavas. Because that is so pleasing to Radha Gopinath. We should really learn to love the devotees. If we do not learn how to love the devotees, we will not progress in our spiritual lives. The most basic teaching, the most essential teaching, if you take any teaching away from any of the Caitanya Caritamrita classes, is that the most important part of your spiritual life is you need to practice and continue to cultivate and grow in loving the devotees. Sometimes it seems hard, but actually it's so easy. We share so much in common with the other devotees that we do not share in common with anyone else in the world. No one else in the world has the same values and worldview as the devotees do. There's so much in common. Why should we let the tiny tensions we have with each other result in us disliking the other devotees? We need to learn to love the devotees. Mukto modhe kon jibo mukto kori mani. Mahaprabhu says, out of all liberated persons, who should be accepted as the greatest? And Ramananda Raya responds, Krishna preme premo jar she mukto shiromani. He who has love for Krishna has attained the topmost liberation. Of course, we discussed this before in the discussion of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. We won't discuss for long. But in fact, the first question really answers this. Krishna Bhakti is the most perfect, satisfactory thing in the cosmos, in existence. We discussed this in the first question of Rai Ramanand Samvad, so I won't comment on it much. Gano modhe kon gano jiber nijo dharmo. Mahaprabhu asks, among many songs, which song is to be considered the actual religion of the living entity? Ramananda Rai says, Radha Krishner premo keli je giter mormo. That song describing the loving affairs of Sri Radha and Krishna is superior to all other songs. This is a particularly specific one. It is not that just because it is the greatest of all songs doesn't mean we should be listening to it now. In fact, the songs that we should be listening to are Upadeshamrita, Vaishnav Ke, heavy songs like this to chastise our mind, to understand the regulative principles like this. These are the songs we should be learning. This is the highest song, yes, but the sun is the brightest thing in the sky. It doesn't mean we dive into it without sufficient protection. So these are the highest songs, but the best songs for us are Jai Radha Madhava, Nrsimha Arti, Gaura Arti, these songs. Kiba Jaya Jaya Gaura Chander. These songs are good. Govinda Jaya Jaya, Gopala Jaya Jaya. These are the songs we should be singing. And slowly, again, under the guidance of the Guru, following again that principle of spiritual life, that's surrendering to the Guru's lotus feet, then eventually we will be able to hear the songs describing Radha and Krishna together. Next, Mahaprabhu says, Shreyo modhe kono shreyo jiber hoy sharo. Krishna bhakto shongo bina shreyo nahi aro. Mahaprabhu asked, out of all suspicious and beneficial activities, which is best for the living entity? What is the best shreyas? What is the best auspicious activity? And Ramananda Rai says the only auspicious activity, again, same point. Not that there are some auspicious activities, there are other inauspicious activities. There is only one auspicious activity, and everything separated from it is inauspicious. And what is that activity? Association with devotees of Krishna. Again, this point is being made. If there is only one thing we can learn, it is that we must love the devotees. And if we can love the devotees, then all auspiciousness will be there. It doesn't matter what the astrology is. It doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter any other consideration. All other considerations are overridden if you are in the association of the Vaishnavas. And if we learn to love the Vaishnavas, if we learn to love the devotees, then all of that auspiciousness is obtained. It doesn't matter bad luck, this consideration of dharma, that consideration of temporary dharma, varnashram dharma. All of it is overridden merely by associating with Vaishnav Thakur. Devotee association. That is the only ingredient. Not only is that the only ingredient that is needed to make something auspicious, it is the only ingredient that can make something auspicious. Vaishnava association. His Holiness Bhakti Vikas Swami Maharaj was once giving a talk on the disappearance day of His Grace Gopiparana Dhana Prabhu. Absolutely, I cannot even speak his glories. He is so glorious. It is unable for me to even begin to speak the glories of such a great scholar and devotee. Bhakti Vikas Swami Maharaj was making the point. He said no matter which day was the disappearance day of Gopiparana Dhana Prabhu, It was an auspicious day, because then that day was able to have the association of the Vaishnav. Kahar shmoron jeev koribe অনুক্ষণ Krishna namo guno lila pradhano shmoron. Mahaprabhu asked, what should all living entities constantly remember? Ramananda Rai replied, the chief objects of remembrance are always the Lord's holy name, qualities, and pastimes. These are what we must always be engaged in remembering. We must not, it is not that Krishna consciousness is, I sometimes think about Krishna, and therefore I will go back home back to Godhead. Krishna consciousness means constantly thinking about Krishna. This can only be done if we have taste for thinking of Krishna. Otherwise, naturally, it's just an uphill fight to resist our inherent desire to not be Krishna conscious. What should all living entities constantly remember? It should be Krishna. Gaur Govinda Goswami Maharaj, Gaur Govinda Maharaj, he would sometimes ask his disciples, he would say, how often do you think about Krishna? And they would say, oh, all the time, brahmachari disciple. All the time I'm doing this seva, that seva. Gaur Govinda Maharaj said, no. Not how often during the day are you serving Krishna? How often are you directly thinking about Krishna? When you are eating prasadam, how often are you thinking Krishna's beauty is so beautiful? How are his pastimes like? What is the glories of Krishna's devotees? How often are you directly meditating and thinking about Krishna's pastimes, Krishna's name, Krishna's devotees? That disciple said, Guru Maharaj, maybe 1 hour a day, 2 hours a day. Gaur Govinda Maharaj said, not enough. Every hour of the day. These days we are so worried. Coronavirus, we will die. Oh, what a tragedy. We are so worried. In so many parts of the world, we are worried though. Terrorist attack will happen. And that's fair enough. I would be worried too. But that is a fault. I'm not in that condition. It's easy for me to say. In simple, easy Australia. I'm not chastising the people who are worried about that. How can I chastise them? I would be even more scared than they are. But this is a very unfortunate condition. Because the greatest tragedy, worse than any terrorist attack, worse than any epidemic, worse than anything that's ever happened on the material plane in this whole universe, in the whole history of every universe, the worst event that's ever happened is that a person has been so unfortunate that they spent a single moment not thinking about Krishna. This is the greatest tragedy. So we should constantly be remembering Krishna. Not just sometimes, not just when we go to the temple, not just on Kartik, not just in Purushottam Mas. Not just on Ekadashi. Every moment of every day we should be thinking about Krishna. This is Krishna consciousness. We should be engaged, constantly thinking. And then we will have perfection. Then we will have all auspiciousness. Gaur Govinda Maharaj would say, the most unfortunate day one can conceive of is the day where Krishna Katha has not been spoken. That is inauspiciousness. That is misfortune. Mahaprabhu says, Dhyeyo modhe jibor kortobyo kon dhyano. Out of many types of meditation, which is required for all living entities, so not which is best for all living entities, but which is necessary, which must all living entities engage in. Ramananda Rai says, Radha Krishna podam bujo dhyana pradhano. The chief duty of every living entity is to meditate upon the lotus feet of Radha and Krishna. Again, reiterating the previous point. Not just is it the greatest tragedy, not just is it the greatest misfortune, but it is something everyone must do. This is why we must preach, in order to awaken people to the activity they must perform. Mahaprabhu says, Shorbo tyaji jiber kortobyo kahan basho. Where should the living entity live, abandoning all other places? Ramananda Rai says, Brojo bhumi brindabon jahan lila rasho. he should live in the holy place known as Vrindavan, Vraja Bhumi, where the Lord performed his rasa dance. We should understand though, however, Vrindavan means the association of the Vaishnavas. Actually, this text is reinforcing the basic idea that we must always associate with the Vaishnavas. This is the most auspicious thing. This is the greatest fortune. Because wherever the devotee is, Srila Prabhupada writes in his purport, in Bhagavad Gita, wherever the devotee is, the atmosphere of Vrindavan surrounds him. So actually, residing in the Dham means, residing in Vrindavan means residing in the association of the Vaishnavas. Mahaprabhu asks, Shrobon modhe jiber kon shreshto shrobono. Ramananda Rai replies, Radha Krishna premo keli korno roshayono. Mahaprabhu said, he asked, out of all topics people listen to, which is the best for all living entities? And Ramananda Rai said, hearing about the loving affairs between Radha and Krishna is most pleasing to the ear. Again, same point as the songs. Be qualified, then you will be able to hear. Otherwise you will only hear your lusty projections, and then there will be no value. Rather than being most glorious, rather than being most worshipable, it'll be a tarnished event, a terrible event. Not auspicious and blasphemous, because you will project your own lusty understanding. One must be at least on the platform of, I think, Ashakti, which is at least a very, very high platform, Madhyam Adhikari, before one starts really delving into these things. And then we reach the last question. Mahaprabhu says, Upasher modhe kon, upasho prodhano. Among all worshipable objects, which is the chief? And Ramananda Rai says, Shreshto upasho Jugol Radha Krishna Namo. The chief worshipable object is the holy name of Radha and Krishna, the Hare Krishna mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. In Srimad Bhagavatam it says, Etavaneva lokesmin pumsam dharma parasmritaha bhakti yogo bhagavati tannama grahanadhibihi. In this material world, the living entity's only business is to accept the path of bhakti yoga and chant the holy name of the Lord again. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This is our main business. This is our main concern. This is the highest worshipable deity. The highest worshipable object is the holy name of the Lord. It's in all ages. The holy name is glorious. Nama, the name itself, is more merciful than Nami, the holder of the name. Because Krishna, the personality Bhagavan, even though he's not different to his name, he will hold offenses against you if you offend him. But the Nam Prabhu, even if you perform so many Nama Parads, it will still slowly purify you. And worshipping the deity is so many different rules, regulations we have to follow. With chanting the holy names of the Lord, there are no rules or regulations. One simply must, with attentiveness, avoiding the 10 offenses, throw up their arms and say, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This is all that's needed. With this, the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, it is the highest worshipful object, and so we should be so happy to chant minimum 16 rounds, where we can extra rounds. This is the most worshipable object. So, like this, we have heard, what is the greatest of this? What is the greatest of that? Now in text 257, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he asks, another point, which is speaking to clarify then. Well, if you're saying all of these things, then what about... I was asking these questions and you gave answers regarding bhakti. So then, what do we... because what is the greatest of all these things? And every answer you gave was directly referencing devotional service. So now I'm asking you a question. What is happening to these people who aren't taking to devotional service? And so Mahaprabhu, he asks the question. And he's asking about two types of people. What does he say? Mukti bhukti banche je kahan duhar goti shthabor deho debo deho joiche obosthiti. What is the destination of those who desire liberation and those who desire sense gratification? This is Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's question. So, what is the destination of those who desire mukti, liberation? And what is the destination of those who desire sense gratification? Bhukti. Ramananda Rai, he replies, those who attempt to merge into the existence of the Supreme Lord will have to accept bodies like those of trees. And those who are overly inclined towards sense gratification will attain the bodies of demigods. So, one may say, hey, wait a second. Trying to aspire for liberation, that's higher. That's more glorious. That's infinitely more... That's better than sense gratification. How can you say that? That at least sense gratification, they will get bodies of demigods, but those who are striving for liberation, they will only get the bodies of trees? What's going on there? We have to understand with a bit of intelligence. Bodies like trees means, what is the nature of impersonal liberation? The nature of liberation means you're just there, like impersonal liberation. You're just doing nothing. You're just still. Vague, not moving. Is a bliss because it's a bliss of ignorance. And ignorance is bliss, in a sense. Because they're ignorant of the higher transcendental realm of Krishna consciousness, Vaikuntha, Goloka. So, because of this, they are having tree-like bodies. Bodies like that of trees. So, bodies like that of trees. But those who are overly inclined to sense gratification, they will become like the demigods, because they will engage in karma kanda. This is not talking about those who want sense gratification and therefore go to prostitutes and eat all meat and stuff like that. They just go to hell. But the ones who aspire for sense gratification properly, as proper as it can be, they eventually, by the execution of yagyas and other forms of dharma, eventually they obtain bodies like the bodies of demigods. But those who aspire for liberation, they won't get that. They just float in the spiritual transcendental soup that is Brahman realization. So, like a tree, we know. What is the glories of the tree? The tree is having no real... I mean, who wants to be a tree? Sometimes we think we want to be a tree. Sometimes we think it would be so nice, so relaxing, I do nothing. But if you do nothing for long enough, it is boring. There's no actual nectar to it. The reason why it seems appealing is because we suffer so much. And because then we have so much suffering, we think a break from suffering would be good. And that's true. A break from suffering would be great. But we should understand, better than a break from suffering is to taste joy, is to taste ecstasy. The spiritual ecstasy of spiritual Krishna consciousness. And so Ramananda Rai, he continues speaking. And he speaks further. And he speaks about, now, he's comparing jnana and prema. So the next two texts 258 to 259, they're both making a comparison. The first is between jnana and prema, and the second is between jnanis and bhaktas. So the first one is discussing the actual experience that each individual is having, and the next one is discussing the individuals themselves. So, what is the text comparing jnana and prem? Ramananda Rai is describing Oroshogya, Oroshogyo Bakko chushe Gyano nimbo fole Roshogyo kokilo kayo Premamro mukule. Those who are devoid of all transcendental mellows are like the crows that suck the juice from the bitter fruits of the nimba tree of knowledge. Whereas those who enjoy mellows are like the cuckoos who eat the buds of the mango tree of love Godhead. For all the reasons we've already discussed in these classes on the Rai Ramananda Samvad, for all of those reasons, for every single one of those reasons, this is true. So I won't go over them, but this is what a beautiful image. Crows sucking from the juice from the nimba tree. This is the dryness of it's bitter, it's tasteless. This is what jnana is. Personal liberation. But bhakti and bhakti jnana, the knowledge we get from executing devotional service, it is like a cuckoo who eats the buds of the mango tree of love of Godhead. And now to compare the bhakta to the jnani. O bhagya jnani ashwad. O bhagya jnani ashwadadoye shushko jnano. Krishno premamrito pano kore bhogaban. The unfortunate empiric philosophers taste the dry process of philosophical knowledge, whereas the devotees regularly drink the nectar of love of Krishna. Therefore, they are the most fortunate of all. They are bhagyavan. What are the jnanis? They are abhagya. They are unfortunate. They have no fortune. But the devotees are bhagyavan. They are filled with fortune. Because of all of this, we are now coming to a point we've spoken so much of the glories of devotional service, of the ecstasies of devotional service, especially with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's liberation just a few chapters earlier. We know at least something, maybe we haven't realized, and we definitely should continue hearing, but we know of the glories now of devotional service, the beauty that it has to offer, the taste that it has to give. All of these things we know. How nectarian, how wonderful. So now knowing all of these things, we can just appreciate the beautiful poetry that is being spoken here. And so then, in this way, Mahaprabhu and Ramananda Rai, they spent the whole night relishing the mellows of Krishna Katha. They were chanting, dancing and crying, and by doing this, the night ended. And the next morning they left to perform their respective duties. But in the evening, Ramananda Rai, he returned to meet the Lord again. And that evening, after discussing the topics of Krishna for some time, Ramananda Rai caught hold of the lotus feet of the Lord and spoke as follows. Krishna Toto, Radha Toto, Premo Toto Shar, Rosho Toto, Lilo Toto, Bibidho Prokar. There are all these various tattvas, these various transcendental truths. Krishna Tattva, the truth about Krishna. Radha Tattva, the truth about Radha. Premo Toto Shar, the truth about the prem that they feel. Rosho Toto, the truth about the loving transcendental mellows. Lilo Toto, Lila Toto, the truth about all of the pastimes. Eto toto moro chitto, koile prakashono, brahma ke ved jeno, porailo narayan. You have manifested all these transcendental truths in my heart, exactly the same way Narayan educated Lord Brahma. What is he saying? Narayan spoke what to Brahma? Srimad Bhagavatam. This purport of the Bhagavat, all of the deepest truths of Bhagavat you've awoken in my heart. Chatur Shloki then, Ramananda Rai Samvad is a bit longer than Chatur Shloki. So, like this, he's saying this is what has happened, and it is what has happened. This is also parampara. Whenever we hear from the spiritual master all of these things, and Dibyo Gyan Hridde Prakashito, we sing this. Narottam Das Thakur is singing this. The Guru has awoken Divya Gyan, transcendental knowledge, in my heart. Whenever the Guru is speaking, it's just like Narayan speaking to Brahma. Just the same. He is awakening transcendental knowledge in the heart. When Guru speaks Bhagavatam to us, it is just the same. And in our heart, transcendental understanding is born. And then, so Ramananda Rai, he's saying this has happened. Parampara has continued. But, even though in one sense, Ramananda Rai taught Mahaprabhu. In the other sense, Mahaprabhu taught Ramananda Rai. And so speaking about this confusion, Ramananda Rai, he says the super soul within everyone's heart speaks not externally but from within. He instructs the devotees in all respects, and that is his way of instruction. And then he quotes the first text of Srimad Bhagavatam. And then he said, I have one doubt only in my heart. Please be merciful unto me and remove my doubt. What is that doubt? Pohile dekhilun tomaro shonashi shorupo ebe toma dekhi muni shyama goparupo. At first I saw you appear like a sannyasi, but now I am seeing you as Shyama Sundar, the cowherd boy. And then he continues describing what he sees. And we will continue to hear the description of what he sees after our short 1 month break from Caitanya Caritamrita as we go over Damodarashtakam. I wanted to conclude on this cliffhanger almost. This cliffhanger. Because before, what was happening? Mahaprabhu was asking Ramananda Rai. Now the tables have flipped, and for the first time Ramananda Rai is asking Mahaprabhu the questions. He's asking Mahaprabhu, I have a confusion. Please explain this to me. Now we are finding the flipping around. And so Ramananda Rai, he will explain the beautiful darshan he is having of the Supreme Lord, and it is a beautiful darshan. He will describe it to Mahaprabhu. And describing it to Mahaprabhu, he will ask his question. And we will hear about this, and then we will delve into this section of the Rai Ramananda Samvad, which is separate to the previous one. We have now finally concluded, after all this time, the questions Mahaprabhu had for Ramananda Rai. And now we hear the one question Ramananda Rai has for Mahaprabhu. But that will come later. For now, we will conclude. We have concluded the Ramananda Rai Samvad. Thank you all so much for joining me. We will continue the next section of it after our break, discussing Damodarashtakam. But as for now, we have completed it. Shri Shri Rai Ramananda Samvad ki Jai. So, on that note, we will conclude for tonight, and then we will have a break next week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. There will be no CC classes, Caitanya Caritamrita classes. But then after that, there will be, for the month of Kartik, there will be Damodarashtakam classes. And then finally, after Kartik has completed, we will continue this 8th chapter of the Rairam, of the Madhya Lila of Caitanya Caritamrita. Srila Krishna's Kaviraj Thakur ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai, Sri Caitanya Caritamrita ki Jai, Shri Shri Rai Ramananda ki Jai, Shri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki Jai, Shri Shri Rai Ramananda Samvad ki Jai, Nittai Gaura Premanande, Hari Hari Bol, Vanchakalpatarubhyascha, Kripasindubhya evacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha, Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda ki Jai. Hare Krishna.